Okay, well, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Incubator. This is now our first major event after the launch for cohort 2. The Salesforce Incubator is a corporate incubator for Salesforce, but unlike other accelerator programs or incubators, our objective is to actually showcase and foster innovation for the benefit of the overall community. That's our customers, and also for these startups, for the ultimate partners that they're going to be. So one of the things that we do is we actually have gatherings like this, where we can bring in some interesting speakers and actually have some interesting dialogue for everybody, for you to engage. And after the event here, we'll be having some networking time as well for you all to get to talk with each other and hopefully ask some follow-up questions. So just in terms of getting the show kicked off here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce, just before I introduce, I wanted to say also this is the first of many talks that we're actually having. So we have a summer series on AI. So this particular cohort is focused on intelligent apps using AI machine learning for the enterprise. And we have a whole summer series that's actually being launched here in June. So June 13th is the first event. So please don't be a stranger and look it up. It's p.force.com/AI Summer Series. Join us for that. So now with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce our panelist, our moderator who will introduce the panel. So Rebecca Iliff is our esteemed guest from AirPR, one of the companies that we want to feature. It's a Salesforce portfolio company. And with that, what I'd like to do is introduce Rebecca.
Thank you. Is this on? Can you guys hear me? I don't think I need this. I could double mic it. I would love that. So thank you, Mike, so much, and Anna and Melanie. I don't know if you guys are here. I can't see into the crowd. But thank you guys so much, and thanks Salesforce for investing in us. We really appreciate that, first and foremost. How many of y'all are Salesforce portfolio companies? Are from there? Okay, good. So before I bring the panelists up, I just want to talk a little bit about AirPR. So we have some of our team in the room today. We are a PR technology company that builds PR measurement and analytics and reporting solutions for companies, much like some of you out there and Fortune 5,000 company or Fortune 500 companies as well. Salesforce is actually one of our customers, so it's kind of like this weird Salesforce inception going on. But we are going to be available afterwards to talk about the technology. We're not going to talk about it too much throughout the course of the presentation, but we will be available. AirPR people, raise your hands too. We're like, yeah, a fourth of the crowd. I've got my fan club here tonight. So why don't we bring Adam Singer up, if you want to come. Adam is from Google. He is a GA advocate. So how many of you guys are familiar with Google Analytics? Everybody? Yeah. He's the guy. Okay, so Google Analytics is actually one of our partners, and Adam's been in the industry, the PR industry, for a long time. He moved over to Google. He actually founded the Future Buzz, which is one of the leading PR blogs, and he also writes for ClickZ, and he's been a great advocate for us, and also promoting AirPR shamelessly, which we don't pay him to do, but we should. So we appreciate that.
Just in the crowd.
Yeah, just to look well. And then Nick Ruda is from Enterprise Strategy Group. He's a senior analyst there. And he's actually working with AirPR on really getting the message out around AI and PR, so artificial intelligence and automation. And he's been a friend for a long time. He works with companies including Dell, Amazon, Google, some of the smaller ones. So his insight is really useful here today. And then Kathleen Flaherty, one of my dear friends. She is a publicist and really marketing communications specialist for entertainment, tech, and even nonprofit. She is Ashton Kutcher's publicist, for one. She works with companies like NextPR and Thrive Market. So she's here to really give everyone a perspective on startup PR and how that's done. So we have kind of a PR pro, an analyst, and an analytics specialist. So you're getting the best information here that you could possibly get. I'm really just a conversationalist. I have no value whatsoever. So before we start, I wanted to get an idea of, before we jump into the panel, I wanted to get an idea of who's in the crowd. So who does actual PR for your company? Okay, or for agencies. Okay. God bless you, first of all. It's a really hard job that no one likes to to admit that. But you guys are kind of the heroes, I think, of the day, especially now with everything going on, all the noise and information. And how many of you guys are from a startup or a company, a brand? Okay. Can you kind of tell me kind of where you're from? I'm going to pick on you. Yeah. Intercom. And what do you guys do? Okay. Anyone else? Up Council. Okay, I've heard of. Oh yeah, I've heard of that. Oh yeah, you're doing great PR. I definitely have heard of you. I think I used you one time, but don't. That's off the record. Anyone else? Anyone else? Companies? You're like in the front. Yeah. Why is no one sitting in the pink chairs? But well, you guys are. They're so pretty. Oh, it's a rocking chair. You're so smart. Oh, good. What company are you with?
The company's called N3N. We do visualization software.
N3N. Okay. And do you do PR as well for them or no? Why are you here? what would you like to know today?
I want to be up to date on current trends.
Okay.
What's hot. We're not doing as much.
Well, I mean, there you go.
We're not doing as much as we need to.
Okay. And you guys really, like, if you were to say, if you were going to take away, and I'll pick on people, but do you want to know more about the tactics? How many of you guys struggle, I guess, with what to do now with PR? Like, what is it? What am I actually doing? How many of you guys feel like that's a struggle? Okay. Just raise your hands. Just say yes. This is why I'm here. No. You raised your hand. So what do you struggle with? Say it again?
We normally only do PR that's tagging along something.
Oh. Okay. I think that's how most people do PR, is reactively, which we're going to try to force people into not doing it that way. Okay, so just wanted a little bit of context. I want to know who's in the audience. Something I was talking about beforehand with Laura from our team is what's interesting now. I think that we tend to forget how much. I'm going to put this down. How much information comes at us on any given day. So just as humans now living in a digital world, I think we sometimes take for granted how much we're like, filtering. And if you look at it from a PR standpoint, what that looks like is, you have to, as a PR professional, parse through all of that information and all of that data and somehow make sense of it. And so where it used to be that you maybe had, 10 publications that you were pitching to, now there's thousands. And so in a world that looks like that, it's our job to use analytics and data to really eliminate that noise, and it really eliminates the burden that we have as PR practitioners to get to the things that matter. And so I think what we're trying to impart to you today is that PR is still very traditional in a sense, and we still need good storytelling. We need to be listening. We need to be doing all the things that we used to do, but then we need the data and the analytics on the back end in order to help us really understand what's important. And if you aren't doing that, hopefully we can get you to a point where, it's just baby steps, And I think also the other thing, you always hear this, PR is, it's a failing industry. It's like not important. It's really about marketing, and it's really about content marketing and all this other stuff. But the truth is that at the end of the day, you still need the person, and you need the critical thinking and the thoughtfulness and all of those things, and the writing, which is a big part of it. We do so much writing and so much content development, which helps our PR team and our PR agency actually have things to talk about. And so I think just as a PR person, just don't take that for granted of how much information you have to parse through and how you really need automation and machine learning and AI to help you do that better. And if you aren't doing that, there's very simple ways that you can start. So what I want to give you, before we jump into the panel, this is a lot smaller than I thought it would be, so I don't know if you can actually see this. But this is how we think, and this can be available to everyone who's here today, but this is how we really think about PR now from with data being in the center and technology being in the center. So it used to be, and Kathleen can talk about this a little bit more during the panel, but it used to be that PR was very linear. So you would have a product release, and you would pitch a journalist, and then TechCrunch would write about it, and then you get this spike, and then you go, okay, yay, we got the coverage, and then you move on to the next thing. And then, we have another product release. Or, we got new office space, or we hired a new CEO. And that was news, and that's not news anymore. No one cares about that. This is a great office, but CNN doesn't care. And so now what we have to do is we have to have this continuous narrative where we're refining the message, we're then kind of testing it on own channels, on social, on our blog, then we're amplifying it, and journalists and bloggers and influencers help amplify that message, and then we measure the desired business outcome, and then we refine it again. So instead of going from one story to another story to another story, we're going around and kind of trying to make it one continuous narrative and then learning from each one. And this is where we call this in the center of PR engineering, which is kind of taking the art and the science of PR and putting those things together. Does that make sense? Yes? Say yes really loud. Say, that's the smartest thing I've ever heard. That's brilliant. Why isn't everyone doing this? Well, they're going to, hopefully, after today. So, all right, let's, and now we're going to go back to, now we're going to go back to our photos, so you know who everyone is. So if you can't see this, we have our Twitter handles down there. Kathleen is so incognito and important that she doesn't have a Twitter handle because she's doing so much work for her clients. But we'd love, obviously, for you guys to tweet and everything like that. But I would also really love for you guys to not be on your phones the whole time and listen. I know that's weird, but it would be great if we just, had a, and we're going to try to engage you guys throughout the conversation. So now I'm out of things to say, and I'm going to turn it over to the panelists. So anyway, all right, so let's kick this off here. Let me just stand. Is that weird? You guys see? Okay. All right, so Kathleen, we're going to start with you. I feel like I should sit in that big blue chair and just stare up at you guys.
I like that chair.
It's kind of nice, right?
It looks really
Or
comfy.
the pink chair. Okay, so yeah, I think I alluded to it a little bit before, but talk about some of the key changes that have happened in the industry over maybe the last like 5 to 10 years where you started. So she started, just so you know, in San Francisco tech in the big boom days with Horn Group.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's.
This
and now
is
we're
a dig at my age. Because I was here for the first boom. Was that 93?
I don't even.
Were you born?
I don't even know.
A long time ago.
Yeah, so talk about that a little bit.
So I think the way I look at it is I think that a lot of things have changed, and then on another hand, not that much has changed. In the sense that we live in this extremely connected culture and digital and vloggers and bloggers and social, and there's just so much noise, as Rebecca said, that a lot of people in PR, I think, get stuck on looking at that and worrying about that. And while that's a very important piece of the puzzle, I think at the beginning, at the base, you have to really look at some of the basics, and that is, for me, what are your core sort of value statements, your messaging, your positioning, and once you go out with something smart, a lot of other things fall into place. And obviously you need to know the landscape of who you want to get to in the digital realm. That matters. But if you go out with a not well thought out message, it doesn't matter who you're going to. So you've got to get the basics down first. And some of that's really simple, but it feels as if people are starting to forget it. That when you start working with a company, or when you are a young company, your CEO, your marketing people, the girl at the front desk, everybody needs to be on the same page as regards to your positioning. So you have to start with almost what I call a positioning workshop. You interview different executives. I don't do it all together because otherwise everybody just agrees with the CEO. So do it independently. And then you sit around a room and you bat it around and you come to some consensus around who we are, what do we do, what do we believe in, why do we do it, what problem are we solving, and you sort of start there. So that's
and I think we were talking about it before too. I think let me point at you at the clicker.
Please do.
I think the challenge with a startup in particular is that a lot of times you've been working on a product for 2 years, and then 2 weeks before you're ready to launch, you call a PR person and you say, hey, we're doing a launch in 2 weeks. It doesn't work like that. It's very hard to, no matter what, to employ or bring in a PR person at the last minute. So I think it's one of those things where, no matter what, you have to have a solid message, but then you have to bring in someone earlier too.
Yeah,
I think is
we
really
were
important.
just talking about this back there, and I was saying a Silicon Valley company just called me last week, and they said, we want to launch in a month. And what they're doing is really innovative and interesting, but they had to build it. And I said, wow, how long have you been working at this? And they said, 2.5, 3 years. And I said, so 2.5, 3 years, and now you want to launch in 4 weeks. I mean, on some level, that's just not smart thinking. You've devoted so much of your life here. Let's get this right. And you can't do that in 4 weeks. I mean, to me, as a new company, in a dream, you'd have 6 months, 4 at a minimum. Or I was just talking to my friend Sarah, who's in the audience, and she does marketing and writing. And what she's done for a couple smaller companies is they brought her in advance to just start getting some of the language together, and then they brought in their PR firm. And I was saying that's like a dream to a PR person, because somebody in this organization started thinking about this when everybody's so busy they don't have time, and they shouldn't. It's not the focus. But so to have somebody like that start in advance, or have the PR firm really start 6 months out, is the way to go.
That's a great segue to, I think, just talking about how PR pros can approach data and how to really look at it. So that, it's a little bit scary, but talk about that and how you would approach that.
Yeah, I came into this from a technology point of view as sales engineering for a small company. It was very one-to-one selling. So you could convince somebody, you could see in their eyes, are they sitting forward, are they nodding off? What are they arguing with me? Then I went into marketing for a while, which was kind of zone coverage, trying to convince a lot of people with outbound messages. Hey, buy this, read our email blast. This is going to be really cool. Learn more. All those offers, click-throughs, et cetera. And then got into managing AR and PR for a company, interestingly, across Europe, Middle East, and Africa, which was a different twist from a technology communications point of view. But what we really wanted to become was kind of a squid and get ink everywhere, which made way more sense when we use newspapers and other print forms, but I'm probably right with Kathleen here in terms of being too long in this industry. I think what's interesting, though, is it's really changed from that seat of the pants feel for, am I getting a reaction here, to where you have to be data-driven, because the broader you get, the more conversations there are that you're going to want to know what's happening. You're going to want to be able to measure them, and they're happening on all kinds of different platforms. Some of them are outbound. People are just reading it through their news feeds. Sometimes they're clicking on things, they're sharing it on social media. Sometimes you'll get a reaction. You'll get hashtags forming that can be good or bad. You'll get people calling in. You need to be able to then use that data to triangulate who these people are, what are they saying about you, does it matter, do I want to respond to this, is this good feedback I should take back to product management and say, hey, people are saying this about us, do we need to get customer support in? But I think that the data, to me, is really key in that I think of this from an integrated marketing communications point of view. PR should not be its own little, go stand in the corner, do your thing, and come back and tell us, were you successful? How many inches did you get? How many publications would you say they were thumbs up, thumbs down? But let's build that into the whole marketing and sales effort and think of it as that top of the funnel. We're building awareness. That awareness can then warm people up for marketing outreach, start to translate into leads. We can score those all the way on down through. But it's a many-form conversation that has a lot of touch points, and you have to be able to identify those people. You have to be able to track those touches. Very few people will buy the very first time they hear about a company or a product. You got to keep engaging with them, keep that conversation going. And so thinking of public relations is public relations. A lot of people think PR is press release. It's really a lot more than that. And it's just the first part of that conversation, and it's an ongoing part. But the data and analytics help you measure, is it actually having an impact? Has this translated into other things? And there's all kinds of technology and platforms now that enable us to actually do some of that and do it in a measured way. You can't...
Like AirPR. Oh, I'm sorry.
I wasn't going to plug you, but go for it. Plug yourself.
I was going to say, and that's a good segue for Google Analytics, because you talk about, you work with a lot of PR professionals. Why is the data-driven storytelling part important? And why does everyone need to be, in the very least, using GA?
Yeah, well, I'll take a step back before we get into tools and tactics. So, a lot of startups in Silicon Valley, the only thing they do from a PR perspective is product launches. And counterintuitively, the companies that are the best at PR, the least amount of PR that they do is product launches. They get PR for it, but actually they get way more media exposure for creative things they do or adding value to an industry. So an example of that with data-driven storytelling is thinking about what data sets you have that you can share that are really interesting and that are newsworthy. And so if you're a really small startup, maybe you have to look at just Google Trends data and tease that out. But if you are starting to get some traction and you're a larger startup, you should look at your own internal data sets. One great example of that is a company called OkCupid. How many of you guys have heard of OkCupid? Great. So it's a free online dating site that basically it's a Match.com clone, but it was free. And so because they didn't charge users, when you signed up for Match.com, you answered quite a few questions, or OkCupid, you answered quite a few questions about yourself. And you opted into letting OkCupid publish that data. And so I never once heard about an OkCupid product launch or feature update, but I read every single one of their blog posts because they publish all of these awesome blog posts sharing data from millions of users about dating preferences. Before OkCupid and their OK Trends blog, no one had ever had access or published a data set like this about our preferences for dating. All sorts of interesting data came out of that. One really fun one, and this one is likely not true, but it's just a fun fact. If you said yes when you signed up to OkCupid to I like the taste of beer, you also statistically were most likely to say yes to I would sleep with someone on the first date. So if you want to find out, don't actually do that. But anyway,
what about wine?
All of this led, I don't know about wine, but all of this led to OkCupid growing at a significantly faster rate than Match, and Match's parent company was forced to acquire OkCupid for $50 million, this free online dating site. And so that was a really creative way. They were, their blog was referenced by every GMA. Every time they published a blog post would talk about it. Today's Show. They were referenced on, Times blog, on NBC's blog. They were just crushing it with PR. And so it's just such a great story of their own unique data set that they had that they used to tell their story.
So I'm going to jump in there. This is a really important tactic that if you're going to write anything down today from a takeaway, which is that the second you have a company or you have some sort of product, you should be trying to position yourself as a thought leader in some way, shape, or form. So owned media, what we're seeing is that owned media has just as much really influence over people coming to take an action on our website as our earned media. And because we publish so often and so frequently, that content now gets syndicated and gets referenced in earned media. And this is what you want to do, because when you just depend on a third party like a journalist or a blogger or influencer, what you're really saying is, I am now taking the control of my message and giving it to somebody else. Whereas if you're owning it yourself and you have really interesting, provocative things to say and smart things to say, oftentimes backed by data, that tends to position you pretty well in an industry. And we've done that with PR tech. I mean, we've basically built the whole conversation around PR technology just, over the years, and that's been really great for us in terms of getting mentioned. So those things do work. So if you're a startup or a PR person for a startup, I would highly recommend really focusing on the owned media channel as a viable channel for lead generation.
Yeah. So, doing research, whether your own data or whether it's something you commission yourself about your sector, is a great way to tell stories with data externally. And then internally, of course, using tools like Google Analytics, AirPR, to tell the story of how our media is working to impact the bottom line. Because, there's nothing worse than a CMO coming to one of us, or if, in your case, maybe your VC's coming to you and saying, well, you did this marketing or you did this PR, what did it do for us? Being able to show those results is really table stakes for all of us as digital marketing professionals because we have the tools. And so, telling those stories internally and being able to show the impact of our results as PR pros is going to get us more budget. It's a good thing to measure our results and be accountable.
Yeah, Kathleen.
Can I tell my story about analytics?
Yeah.
So as the PR firm, I don't know that I would have been super stoked to hear that the client was going to bring in all these analytics and start measuring and looking at every single little thing I was doing. I thought, oh, that's just a way to kind of harass me about what I'm not doing, or I don't know. I felt sort of afraid of it. And then I was in a meeting with a company called Servios, and Rebecca was there presenting what are the words?
Dashboard, the workspace. You know,
The AirPR kind of dashboard of what they had done for this company, which was, I hadn't done all the PR, so I was cool in it. But it was a review of all the PR that had been done and what it really earned and, you know, all that. So I watched this whole thing that I would have been completely skeptical of and not into. And what I realized was, oh my God, I was afraid of analytics, thinking it was a bad thing for me. Those analytics are totally the friend of the PR firm, because I learned so much stuff that I didn't even know I didn't know. You know, that like, wow, remember there was some hit on Inc.com that got, you know,
yeah, the VR
over,
trends,
yeah,
that was
all over creation, and it was an article by a contributor, and I don't know, I just would have looked at that as like an okay hit, no great shakes. But the ramifications of that hit were way bigger than I knew. So I guess as a person who had no time for analytics, I don't care, I don't want to know about it, I'm just keeping my head down doing my job. Now I would welcome it, and I feel like as the PR firm, all it does is make me better at my job and smarter. And I can also easily back up better what I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
It gives you a seat at the table.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
you have to have data now in order to have a conversation with a CEO or a CMO that's worth their weight. So I think...
So that's another big change in PR, speaking of how has it changed. That's big.
Any questions? Okay, wait, hold on. You, and then you. I was pointing... Were you asking for... Oh, asking for a mic. Somebody were asking for water. Can I get a sip?
He's asking for wine.
Yeah, wine. Beer, actually.
Don't be silly.
2 questions. Is on? Okay, cool. First question for Adam regarding, I love the OkCupid, I love the research surveys, awesome stuff. As a small startup, how do you even get found if you have what you think is awesome content? That's the first question for Adam. And then to Kathleen. Kathleen, regarding the metrics, that's a question we're having all the time. We're actually looking for a PR, I shouldn't say this in a room full of PR people, we're actually looking for a PR consultant. But a lot of the questions we're thinking about, and we've been talking to a lot of PR people, is, okay, tell me about metrics of what are the bottom line metrics, because my CEO is going to ask me, hey, you spent X amount of money on a PR agency or consultant. What does that mean? And what is that really driving for us? And I've had a lot of conversations with PR people, and they haven't been able to tell me much, and it's been kind of frustrating. So, 2 separate questions.
So let's start with Adam.
Yeah.
Did you get the question?
And
I forgot.
the question was how to get found, so I have awesome content. So I will say one thing for all of the startups in the room who are not quite at that stage, you should build your community before you need them. You should grow your followings on social channels. You should build your clout in a sector. You really need to do that if you want to engage in things such as content marketing. You're not going to be able to do one thing, publish one blog post, and suddenly go viral. I wouldn't count on that. But certainly if you have interesting content and you're starting to share it with people, you know, sharing it with media and bloggers probably isn't a bad idea. You know, maybe send some introductions first and get those relationships started. Start publishing things to your site. Do some keyword research. See what people are searching on, and you know, optimize your posts for certain key phrases that do have some traffic behind it. You know, you should definitely share it on social. If at first you don't have a community, you should use some paid tactics, right? PR people don't like to use paid tactics, but really it is something we should be using now, because there is no more pure organic stream. Most of the feeds that are online now, Facebook, Twitter, etc., you know, they do start to prioritize a lot of the paid content. So make sure you have some budget to find that awesome content, and hopefully that will start to spark more interest in it, and it can get shared more organically.
I would say using third-party influencers can help too, bring credibility. If they haven't heard of you or your company, then here's somebody who covers that market space. And you know, as much as I don't want to encourage everybody in the room to send us stuff saying, hey, story idea for you, if it's a good story, actually that works. And then, you know, maybe we'll write about it, and then maybe I'll get a call from a journalist going, what was that? And, you know, that's one way. Or maybe I'll just tweet it out and somebody else will pick it up and retweet it. Or there are ways you can start to astroturf your way in, and that's a good thing.
Did you have Kathleen? So the other one was a metrics question. I don't know. I'm happy to answer it too.
I'll just give my 2.
Yeah.
And then you can answer it way better than I can. But my feeling about that is, number one, it's a really super smart question. And it's a question a lot of people don't ask. And I've been on both sides of this, the client managing the PR firm and then the PR firm being managed. And as the client managing the PR firm, I want to know exactly what you're saying. As the PR firm, I don't want you to ask me that because I don't have a really genius answer, which is why I'm now such a fan of these analytics, because now I feel like, oh my God, I need to really dig into this and start to, pull out of what I see AirPR and other people like them can do. And then I have answers to your questions that aren't just sort of ethereal and about the work I do and,
I want to add something else. So there's a couple things that are prerequisite to really being able to measure and analyze, and that is, one, a fair amount of data, which means, in your case, coverage or owned media, earned media, and enough of history behind that to really be able to analyze. So you can't launch a PR campaign and then go, okay, what do I know? With a month's worth of data and 2 press hits. It doesn't work that way. So what you have to do is you have to commit to doing it over a long term and over, a year to 2 years. We've now been tracking our company for 5 years, and only, I would say, in year 3 could we use the PR data that we had from our own system to help drive business strategy. That was 3 years that we were looking at all that content. And, we're still doing it now, obviously a little bit more on a granular basis because we have the data, but I think the other is, like, I can't say this enough. You have to stop thinking about PR in terms of something linear and in these little buckets. You have to look at it over the long term, and you have to be committed to the process of analyzing the data. So once you have that going, and once you're able to test messages and things like that, I'd say the metrics you want to look at are, is the press that we're getting actually driving traffic to the site? Are people engaging? Are they amplifying that message? Am I getting syndicated on other channels because the information's so interesting? Are journalists calling me? That's kind of a harder metric to measure, but that's one. So I think, again, it takes a while, and the reason PR people, I'll tell you why PR people don't answer that question. Because a lot of times PR people are put in a very tricky situation where they don't have access to the analytics because the company or the brand is not organized around it, and they don't actually have anything on the back end for you to look at. Go ahead.
That should be part of, as PR pros, it should be part of your onboarding process of a new client, or when you start working at a company, that you do get access to tools, and that you do have a seat at the table. And if the data isn't being democratized across the business, that's like a pretty big red flag about that company or that specific team that isn't willing to share data, because it should be a collaborative effort. So
yeah. Agreed. Yeah, you had something to say, or you just?
I was agreeing with you.
Oh, okay, thank you. I love that. By the way, I love it when you agree with me. When anyone agrees with me.
When you showed me the demo of AirPR 2 years ago, a live demo, I said, let's put in the name Rebecca Iliff and see when we get back. I remember seeing 100% positive feedback on all the social
really good
media
data
mentions.
scientists. I don't know. Ask my team. I don't know if that's true. Yes, question. I love that you guys are asking. Oh, wait, hold on. 2, 3, 4. This is good. Go ahead.
So I have a couple of questions.
So one at a time, because we can't retain that much information.
Okay.
Yeah, one at a time. Okay.
So is this working?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to stand up and get on the pink chair?
Oh my God, come on. We don't have to do that.
And just be like, hey. So just picking one. So what I'm trying to do right now is we had a PR firm in the past. We could not prove that it was actually adding any kind of value to our business. There was a lot of issues with the PR firm beyond that, so we stopped PR for a year. So now we have, of course, some announcements coming up in this next year. So we're looking to get maybe, I know, to your point. But I was given 6 months, so it's not terrible. And so I've been asked, I want to get, say, 2 to 3 features. And of course, I know, having been in PR, features are a tall order. And it means, waking up every day and just being reactive to what's going on in the media, doing consistent outreach, and then getting press in order to get the big press. So since it's just me, potentially, what's the bare minimum I could do to work toward a goal of getting a feature story?
Why is that your goal? Sorry.
Oh my God, such a good question.
Answer that question.
I guess the question, it's a really good question.
Mm-hmm.
Right, right. But I guess there are other kinds of press that could lead to leads. I think that it's a question of like, if we're announcing, it's interesting hearing what you said earlier. Because if we're announcing a product or financing, I don't personally think that that's super interesting. And you said this as well, because everyone's doing that every day and there's too many financings. You have to be raising $1 million or $1 billion to get press around it. So what we're looking for is some way that we're actually mentioned in a substantial way in an article.
So can I jump in and you guys can answer? So do you have a blog?
Yes, we have a ton of content marketing.
Okay, a lot of content. What's the one thing that makes you unique is the question you need to ask, and what's your point of view around that? And then you need to put that at the center, and then you need to have different angles and spokes on that wheel, and just start testing, on social, like what are people reacting to? I guess the other thing is, in order to really get a fair amount of press or a feature story, there has to be some sort of hook. I mean, that's pretty basic.
Right.
So without knowing the news, but I would say in general, if you're struggling with understanding what the story is or what's the actual angle, then maybe hire someone to do it. But I think so. Let me back up, because we were talking about this earlier. What I would caution people against in terms of PR is saying, we have a really interesting announcement. What publication are we going to be in? What you need to say is, we have something really interesting for a customer that could be of service to the customer, and what channel is going to be the best way to get me there? That's the question you should be asking. Not, am I going to get in Time, New York Times, CNN, TechCrunch? That's the wrong way to approach PR, because that's not the end game. The end game is to drive leads. So what you really want to know is, how do I serve my customer? What's the thing that they want and that they need, and what are the channels for getting me there? And then it can sometimes reframe the way you're thinking, and we can talk about this.
But so you're like reverse engineering it,
Right.
And you're doing what Rebecca talked a lot about in the beginning, which is you're thinking in a very linear fashion. We have news. We want to be in the Wall Street Journal.
So I'm actually, I don't know if this is. Okay. I think it's more, I love this idea of surveys, and I've done that in the past in order to get press, and that's been really successful at my previous company. So I guess what I'm saying is more day-to-day in terms of, I forget what it's called, when you're being reactive to the news. So you see this reporter is writing about XYZ, so we're going to pitch them and tell them, like, I know our value propositions, I know what we can talk about, but my capacity is limited, so it's the bare minimum I can do in order to get us some press.
I'd say if that's your stance, it's not going to work.
I agree.
You can't. That's the whole point. You cannot approach it like that. You cannot say, this is why PR is in the pickle. Because we have no budget and we have no people. And I'm super passionate about this because I've been stuck in this position so many times as our CEO here. Are you listening? With no resources to make magic happen. And it's really hard. It's really hard. And if you're thinking that way, you're never going to have value in the organization. I really believe that. There's no value there.
Responding to all the rapid response stuff is awesome, but it does sound like, with any marketing, you need to take a step back and maybe have a plan over the next year. So you're not wondering what you're doing every day. Here are the tactics that, I am going to be working on this week, and that way you can take a little bit more of a strategic approach. But not saying not to do the rapid response things, but it definitely sounds like you need to maybe do a little bit of PR planning.
And also to have the, I would say, the voice to go to somebody in the organization and say, hey, this is what I need to do, and it's impossible to do what you're asking me to do because I don't have any resources. So again, I'm happy to talk to you about this because I'm obviously super passionate about it. But I want to move on to someone else's question, and then we can take that offline. Yep, go ahead.
So my question is around social media and viral. And I'm going to step back. So my background is in sales and marketing and not in PR. So the company that I'd like to mimic is Nextdoor. How Nextdoor started small and now they're in tons of different neighborhoods all over the United States, etc. So I have a startup that I'm helping that needs to have little support groups around the United States, and it's for autism. And so my question is, how can you use PR or Facebook or et cetera to leverage that to get those things going? Or is that more of a marketing? Is it I'm just curious.
Yeah,
How are like the whole viral?
So are you looking to replicate what like the ALS group did, like that sort of marketing?
Ice bucket?
Yeah.
No, I'm not looking to.
Because I think I do
step
think-
back. I'm not looking to. Basically, I have a product that I want to sell to all of the autistic parents.
Sure. Well, going viral is not a strategy, by the way. It's like you should be playing. It's like playing a lottery with your marketing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, exactly. So, but what I'd want to do is create support groups.
Sure.
Within various communities.
Within the community
Right.
to make it a bigger message.
That's great. I love the word of mouth stuff. Yeah.
So that because there's nothing more passion about a child with a disability than a parent, and then they can help each other. But I'm not sure about PR and Facebook or Google Groups or Google Hangouts, and how do you
Really short answer, you need to hire someone or bring someone in to help you with that. That's a tall order, and you don't want to risk learning that stuff on the fly. I
haven't done it.
And by the way, like sales and marketing and PR, all those things are kind of
totally
related now. It's all important, and it all has to do with communications and having a voice and having a point of view, and all those things inform the other. So you're probably not far off, but I think just tactically, you probably need to bring someone in, a consultant who you could pay, a minimal amount of money even to just give you a strategy. Because again, it depends on budget and all of those things.
That's my next question.
Yeah, I know how much Nextdoor spends on PR, and it's a lot.
Okay,
so it was a lot from the beginning. So it's hard to replicate a strategy that's outside the budget, but you can start really small, and then there's ways of building on that. It just takes a while,
So that's my next question is, can you just give some feedback as far as, I think, what questions, how do you shift through quality PR person? Probably not going to meet my needs.
Let's take that offline. That's probably I'm happy to answer that after it's probably
We'll get way too snarky if we start talking about PR.
Okay, and then there was someone else who had a question. Yeah, go ahead. Well, we need the mic so we can get you on the recording.
Okay, I would like to hear your panelists' perspective, respectively, on the topic of PR, that is for B2B versus B2C, and the metrics that are very specific in terms of tracking and understanding the impact of PR.
What company are you with?
I'm with a startup that is B2B in the fintech area.
Okay.
That's awesome. So actually my background is mostly in B2B, and PR and social and all these tactics I actually think are more potent for B2B than B2C, because you have such a smaller, more niche audience reading that content. So you should double down on any PR efforts. For me, it depends on, I guess, where your company is. If you're pre-IPO, if you've just gone public, there's a lot of different metrics that matter at different points in time. If you're targeting, new investors, or you're targeting actual user growth, those would be different metrics. But, for me, I think it's really for B2B, it's from a user perspective, it's definitely all about creating that awareness to get people to start to be, sign up for your newsletter and get into your system so you can start to nurture them along the way. And you can talk a little bit about more of that. He's a B2B guy.
I've done 18 years B2B, 2 years B2C. I think it's the targeted audience is really a key point, whether you're doing it with search engine optimization or you're getting a user group on LinkedIn or somewhere else, that you can talk to like-minded people and they're very receptive. You don't need to, and I wasn't being snarky, you don't need to have front page New York Times. What you need to do is have a really active, engaged group. And one may be more appealing to a CEO. Hey, were we in New York Times? Awesome. I'm going to tell everybody. My mom's going to love me for it. But back to your point, metrics, could be really engagement. When we put up a blog post on LinkedIn to that group, how many views did it get? How many people that we saw then entered our website? And this is where you need some of the data platforms on the back end, which can be really hard as a startup if you try and build them themselves. Thankfully, there's more cloud-based services that do this. But you can look at identifying, is this individual, then did they show up? Did they sign up for a newsletter? Did they tweet something? And being able to identify that individual across platforms and looking for those touches, responses, ideally some form of deepening engagement as it goes. That's what I focus on, rather than column inches or number of stars for the publication or something. But making it very, very targeted. A niche audience is great, because then you have people who are more enthusiastic, more informed, more likely to respond, rather than, I don't know anything about that topic, which you get in a B2C quite often.
Although there was one cool B2B company, just for some inspiration. A while ago, there was a company called Grasshopper, and they do VoIP phones. They sent me, I'm a B2B blogger, they sent me along with several thousand other bloggers a packet of chocolate-covered grasshoppers in the mail. And this story got tons of exposure. Their YouTube video got millions of views. They got the New York Times story and the Wall Street Journal story. So you can also think big with B2B too. If you're a big VC funded company and you want to get creative and work with marketing, you could do those things too. But certainly, the trade publications and the more niche sites are probably going to be what actually brings you leads.
Yeah. And get people to try the product should be a goal. I mean, if you have a great solution for parents with special needs, put it in front of people for free a little bit. Get them to talk about it with their communities, because they have their own support communities, and that's how you start to encourage that viral. Now, you still need to track and measure those outcomes. You may need some help along the way, but thankfully, again, there are tools now that make that stuff easier.
Yeah, and I think just one thing to mention, I know we're talking a lot about data and analytics, but I do also want to impart that we're still humans, we're not robots. And so in the beginning, particularly with startup, it's pounding the pavement to build those relationships with journalists, with influencers. That's the way we got our first 25 customers, was personal relationships. You cannot take that for granted. It's still really important. You need the other stuff too, but what he's saying is someone thought, oh, mightn't the influencers like chocolate-covered grasshoppers?
They're really good.
Someone thoughtful, someone thinking
really
about
good.
it, and not just going, I'm going to press send on my email and send everyone the same email. That doesn't work. It's not
bugs
useful.
are the next big food trend too.
Really?
High in protein.
There you go.
Well, Google gave me a Google Home, and I blogged about it because my kids started interacting with it, and I liked it. So
A Google what?
Google Home.
Oh.
Their home control device, which says trivia games. Kids love it. I enjoy it too. And my wife, who was very skeptical, why is this thing going to listen to us all the time, has now come around very quickly. So then, we talk about it, and then that starts to be the result. I know somebody in Google marketing and PR said, hey, that was a success. Here's an influencer now talking about our product and getting other people to think about it, where maybe Alexa's got a bigger advertising budget. But again, getting your metrics to very granular things like that may or may not be the traditional view of PR, but maybe very many small touches may be way more valuable than one big hit.
I want to shift the conversation a little bit to thought leadership, because this is something we talk a lot about internally and how important it is to have a point of view. And I think this is one of the best ways to go about, I would say, doing PR, is just becoming a thought leader. So Kathleen, I did want to talk about obviously what startups need to pay attention to, but particularly within the context of how do you become a thought leader? What's a thought leader? What does that even mean? And how would you define that?
I guess to me, a thought leader means someone within a specific industry that has a unique perspective and therefore can offer commentary on different things within that industry. They're a voice. They're a voice within the industry.
Authority.
Is that good enough?
Yeah.
And how do you get to be one? For me, I think first and foremost is actually be a thought leader. Have something interesting to say, have the right personality. I see companies make this mistake. They look at it backwards. They see a trend going on and they say, ooh, who in our company can talk about that and try to be a voice? So they grab the CMO and try to put him in front of a bunch of media, but he's stiff, he doesn't have the right personality, he's not passionate about it, and that's everything you don't need as a thought leader. As a thought leader, it really has to be organic and real. And I think then also you really have to have an arsenal of things to say and content. Because once you start it, you get that ball rolling, you need to be consistent in your opinions and your thoughts and what do you have to say, and then media start coming back to you. But it isn't a one bullet kind of a thing. You have to be ready with a lot of content.
That's rarely a product pitch. It's starting with a user problem,
Yes.
and then you talk about that, and you may never mention your product, your company, et cetera, but you're trying to get people interested in these topics and then talking about it.
Yeah, and then get visible, speak at places, show up at places, offer commentary, network. I mean, you have to be sort of vocal, and again, that's why if you have no passion for it, it's never going to work. You also want to engage with your audience, on your social media feeds, like talk to people, because then they start to see you as an influencer and the whole thing just grows.
I think the other thing, we were talking about this before with, particularly in Silicon Valley, there's so many startup founders and there's so many people vying for the same things. And so I think that people, a lot of times, and PR people are tasked with the very difficult job of a CEO saying, but I want to be an industry leader.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that doesn't just, you don't just become an industry leader by saying I'm an industry leader. You have to actually have the steady cadence and drumbeat of those things over time. And so I think the first thing is to say that takes years to build.
And the experience and the skill set. If you don't have that behind you, I mean, it's just never going to fly.
Or if you're just awkward, that doesn't work either. It happens a lot. It's like, really don't put them out in front of someone. Don't put them out publicly. I think that's another issue. Go ahead. Are you going to say something?
I was going to make a joke.
You should make a joke.
The other
Do
thing,
it.
LinkedIn launched today, you can add a guru filter to your LinkedIn profile picture, and boom, instant thought leader.
When did that happen?
Today, go on LinkedIn and you can add they launch filters because, hi fellow kids, like they want to be like Snapchat and Instagram, because I don't know why they launched that feature.
But speaking of LinkedIn, I have to say LinkedIn and Medium are really great tools for owned media and thought leadership. If you have something interesting to say, if you're a CEO, really positioning them in that way and
the
having
Pulse platform is actually their one good product. The actual tool is just recruiter spam. It's all.
Okay, don't even get me started on Google Plus. Okay, let's not even go there.
Twitter is my favorite social network.
I know it is. You direct message me on Twitter. I'm like, just text me. I don't even go on Twitter.
Who uses text anymore?
Come on, are you really going to do that right now? Who Twitter messages, instant messages?
What do you think of Quora?
Quora's cool. It's a cool platform.
Don't ask me. I'm clearly not cool. Go ahead.
Quora just launched an ad platform this week too. So now you can actually run self-serve ads on Quora. I think it's a great platform. And their content ranks really high in Google. It's very high quality content. So.
But just make sure the things you're answering. Again, it's all just messaging. It needs to be consistent. You don't want to just be throwing stuff up there. There's a lot of bad information on Quora too. Right. So you want to make sure you're associated with the good things. You don't get lumped into a conversation that isn't useful. Yes. Oh.
A quick comment and a question. So first, I worked for a data science company, got acquired by Salesforce. I just want to endorse your tactic of surfacing data sets, your own data sets. We use that successfully a lot. Great stories. The OkCupid one. Anytime you can do that, that works. You get attention.
What was the name of it?
The company was BeyondCore.
Okay.
Data analytics. So the question, I stepped out for a minute. I think you kind of spoke to this, but I haven't really seen placement to pipeline tracking yet. What's state of the art to track that? And maybe your tool does this, and I swear I did not meet you ahead of time before this event to talk about this. But that's the key, right?
So,
how do we go from placement to the
Their tool brings
Salesforce
together all of your offsite PR with on-site traffic in Google Analytics. So their tool helps bridge the gap between what's happening with your brand out in the wild and your own site. So
I want it in Salesforce in my CRM and my pipeline report.
Yeah, I mean, and GA also can integrate with Salesforce, so you can get those leads ultimately tracked.
Because that's really the proof in the pudding of the PR effort, right? Is pointing to the pipeline you generated. At one measure.
To a degree, it's one metric. It's not all of it, but yeah, that's part of it. We don't actually integrate with Salesforce yet, and there's a reason for that. But yeah, I think that's important. I think that what PR analytics today can do is give you signals as to what's getting you closer to what matters to your business.
You can also talk to that fellow right there in the plaid shirt who runs an analytics consultancy. They do work with Salesforce integrations and things like that, and could help you.
Any other questions? Yes.
What do you guys think about reaching out to reporters and bloggers for meet and greets?
From what?
Like meet and greets, like inviting them into the office for lunch or meeting them somewhere?
Reporters love free food. I'm a blogger, and I will never say no to free food. I'm not as important as a reporter. I write a once monthly analytics columnist, but I'll certainly have lunch with, someone if they want to feed me. And obviously, I'm not going to write it up unless the content is really good and the brand is tier one and it has a story. But I think it's a good tactic.
Yeah, I think that any sort of, now we're really craving, I think, personal attention from people, and just we get so many emails and tweets and all that. So I think writing a note, like a hand note. I mean, it sounds so old school, but in a sense, going back to those tactics that can get you in the door. And just being friendly and hospitable.
Because at this point, that makes you stand out. Yeah. That's something different because people aren't doing it. So yeah, I think it's a great idea.
And target it. Know who you're going to.
Yeah.
I get tons of invitations for things for areas of IT I don't cover. So you've done no research about me. So if you send a handwritten note, but it's the wrong topic, then you're
That's
off.
probably
so.
You don't want to just have lunch? She seems really nice.
No, I definitely have lunch. I'm just saying it's better if it's targeted.
I think that is the toughest thing now is just all of the irrelevant pitches. Like I get pitched a lot because I write for a couple of publications, and it's like
people don't do their research.
They don't do their research, or they just that they've sent it to 50 other people with the same thing. Dear XX. It's like, that's not my name, so I know that's a scam, But anyway, analysts versus journalists, just really quickly. People don't understand, I think, sometimes.
And it's important because part of your PR or general communication strategy should be analyst relations. To the point earlier, help you understand the market, maybe conduct a survey that'll get you some good thought leadership type news. There are a lot of ways analysts can facilitate. I think one of the big differences is journalists report. They try and find things that are newsworthy and crank it out as fast as possible, but usually, facts with a little bit of spin on it. Analysts really try to analyze, is the name, and understand a bit better. So break it down for us, help us understand. Don't be shy about sharing your problems, not just we're the best in the world, because we'll be like, okay, I get it. You're a tiny startup. You haven't figured everything out yet. Maybe I can help you. And that's where we kind of exist to facilitate. I often say, talk to me like I'm your grandmother, which is probably good advice for PR in general. Not like pillow talk to my grandmother. But I don't know why that always comes out weird in my own head when I say it. But break it down and don't assume a lot. If you want to pitch cannabis or autism or something else, maybe it's peripheral, maybe there's a technology analytics angle to it that I would be really interested in. But we need to find and identify that common ground. So it's not as much a one-way, here's something cool, let me write this down. It's very much a conversation, and I think it's a great role to play. It's fun. You may sometimes get a blog. Probably your ratio in terms of coverage is going to be way less. I'll usually tweet things out if they're at least topically relevant because that helps me promote my profile too. But I think it's an overlooked part of the communication strategy. And you can't start just like you can't start too early on a company launch, talking to analysts about what you do. As third-party influencers, bloggers, other people out there, it's definitely worth having that.
I think for me as a PR person, analysts are really important because what you just alluded to, they lend a really powerful third-party credibility. And just in general, analysts tend to be really supremely smart people who know a lot about whatever verticals or markets they cover.
Present company accepted.
Except this guy. But so when you're at the stage of wanting to sort of test stuff out and run your positioning by someone, and analysts are a really, really useful place to go.
I have one really, I know she's flashing the end. We're at the end. I got it. One really quick thing. I want to know what each of you think. Is there such a thing as bad press?
Yes, absolutely. Look at Uber. They're a train wreck.
Okay. Ooh.
So mean.
Nick?
Paraphrasing Oscar Wilde, the only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about.
So you're saying no, there's no bad press?
I'm saying unless it's like objectively you've done something horrible.
Fairness.
In general.
Yeah.
In general, getting more awareness is a lot of what PR is about, and it gives you an opportunity to do a service recovery. Even in United's case, like he finally, third time around, got the apology right, and a lot of people go, okay, yeah, you're human, that was not under your control, but you're doing things to make it better. I get that, and sometimes you build stronger loyalty that way. if you can get in front of crises and actually react to them in a humble, genuine way and try and resolve it.
I think for like a 50-year-old brand, it's different than a startup. I think for a startup, if the story is lost, it could just be gone, right?
I think both. I don't know which way I would absolutely put the hammer down. I mean, I think there are certain people or companies that have gotten bad PR and it killed them, or it killed. I mean, not literally, but killed their career, killed their business. I mean, so that was definitely bad PR. But in general, it really does generate awareness. If nobody knows who you are, and then you get a bunch of press, and if you can fix it, sometimes it can really work itself out to be actually even kind of a good thing for you.
Who's going to Fire Festival next year? Come on.
But don't use that. I think the point that I would say is don't try to use that as a strategy. I think sometimes startups think if I'm provocative and I say something really over the top, that I may get bad press. Don't use it as a strategy. Just know that if it happens, you can recover from it. And then, I think just really quick key takeaways, and then we're going to break, and you can grab us afterward for more conversation if you would like. But I think just something to keep in mind, if you're going to be doing PR, start a lot earlier than you think you need to, and engage someone early on that can help you with messaging and positioning and writing. The second is that you really do need to test those messages in a safe environment before you go and kind of blast those things out to the world. And so there's ways of doing that through owned media and social channels. The third is make sure you have metrics in place or some sort of measurement in place, even if it's rudimentary, just so you know what the goals are, and then as a startup, and then keep refining that. And I would say, again, get someone in-house that is a communicator a lot earlier than later. So anyway, thank you guys for coming. Thanks to the panelists.
Thank you.